even though I'm right-handed. I just you find a way. And I ended up back doing the 100 meters. And I ended up winning.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. I ended up winning state titles. I won a silver medal at nationals. And what I realized now is it was almost like closing this loop back to that 12-year-old pact where I was just I'm never going to do this again. And there I was, at 34, 35, 36, out on a track, an athletics track, of all things, the obsession back then was running. And here I was doing the 100 meters, albeit in a wheelchair instead of on my feet.
Wow, this is so. I love this. We read all of your websites, your blogs, and I never found where you won silver in the Paralympics. I'm putting in the copy of this podcast.
Yeah,
this is
I'm all in for winning. Yeah, sorry, it wasn't at the Paralympics. It was at our national championships here in Australia.
You won.
Yeah, I did, and that was amazing.
It's amazing, I have a mentor. His name is Tim Grover. He was the trainer of Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. He would say, "This is winning. It's relentless and winning." He has a book called Winning, and this is you, Stacey. He speaks about cleaners in the book Relentless. I'm telling you, you are a cleaner and you are all in for winning. This is so incredible. So you wrote another blog, and then I have a couple of other questions that I think because you heard that voice, I've heard that voice before, that it comes from within you, like the one that it's time to get fit, and wow, and it sends you into a realm of faith that you didn't expect it, right? Like how you say the universe conspiring in your favor, in support, because you just conspire in your favor. You chose to hear that voice. But you have a blog that says finding your voice. And I think that's very important because you definitely found it with so many challenges, being on a wheelchair, all the stuff that people will use as an excuse. You found your voice, you heard the voice, you hit the voice, and you are committed to excellence. So tell us a little bit about the power of finding your voice for the people that haven't been able to find it. And what does resilience has to do with this?
Yeah, it was quite interesting that I ended up on a bit of a journey of personal development in my late 20s, early 30s. And I know even people around me found it hard to imagine, but I felt that I lacked motivation. And it's quite hilarious looking back on it. But I was someone that I said committed to excellence, and I really liked learning new things. But I found that I was learning lots of things and not actually putting them into practice. And through my 20s, I did some really interesting things. I ended up involved in politics because I wanted to make a difference, and I ended up, being a candidate for local and state government here in Australia. And I ended up just doing some really interesting things, and I was always about, say yes and figure it out later. And so, through this journey of personal development, I ended up with some good mentors. And it was when I'd come back I went to the Solomon Islands as a volunteer in 2011. And I went over there as a mentor to people with disability, and I'd never been overseas before. And when I came back, I just had this moment where I was sitting in my office and I looked around and I thought, what the heck am I doing here? Not anyone could do this job that I was doing with a bit of project management and accounting experience, but not anyone could do what I'd just done. And it was that first time that I truly felt that there was some value in my own personal experience, because along the way, people always kept saying to me, Stace, how did you end up so positive and optimistic and ambitious and all these things, even though you've had so many things go wrong? But I had what I call now little old me syndrome. There's nothing special about me. And so I ended up in a workshop that was about speaking, writing a book, publicity, copywriting, all of those things. And my intention there, and this was after I'd been to the Solomon Islands, is I thought I could learn to speak to raise awareness for these people in developing countries that had it was terrible what they were up against. And at the time that I went over there, it was 21 years since I had my accident, and I found out that people that had a similar injury to me in developing countries, that 75% of them died within 2 years. And so I just felt compelled that I needed to do that. But it was actually in this particular workshop where I was learning about, being a speaker and stuff like that that the mentor said to me, he said, Stacey, you need to be sharing your story. He said, and I said, look, I don't want to talk about myself because everyone will think I'm a total wanker for talking about myself. And it's just such an Australian thing. It's just like, don't stand out. Don't say you're good at anything. Don't talk about yourself. It's the tall poppy syndrome, they call it here. It's terrible. And so I said, look, I don't want to talk about myself. And he said, Stacey, he said, with a story like yours, if you don't share, you're being selfish. And I'm like, wow. How could I argue with that? And, a couple of months later, I was on stage up at the Gold Coast at an event of his, sharing the 5-minute story, the 5-minute version of my story for the first time. And, I got a standing ovation. I had people laughing and crying in 5 minutes. And for the next couple of days, just people constantly coming up to me, sharing what that meant to them, how inspiring it was, that type of thing. And so I thought, maybe there's something in it. And that was 10 and a half years ago. And, this year is 10 years since I left my last job to pursue this as a career. And it was another mentor that actually put the word resilience to what I do. And she said that is, what you can teach using your story. So I ended up reverse engineering how I got from, the lowest of the lows to where I was at that point, and put together a framework of resilience. And that became, my first book, How to Be Resilient.
Wow. This is so powerful. I love that you reverse engineer what you went through and how you came through it, like Winston Churchill says that when you're going through hell, keep going, that you go through it, keep going through it, and then you'll find heaven. That's my addition to Mr. Churchill's words. But I really find it so powerful, your story. And I agree with your mentor. It's selfish for us not to share our stories, selfish for us, especially those of us who chose to do something out of the tragedy. We created a blessing. Out of the curse, we created a blessing, right? That's the duty, I believe, of the soul, of the resilient human, of someone committed to excellence. You can't keep it for yourself. It's to build worlds, to elevate people, to empower others. And I'm so inspired by you, and I love you went to politics. I love every single thing you've done. So, wow, I don't even know. I think I need like hours with you, but I have a couple of other questions here. So you really committed your life. You're a public speaker, and we'll make sure to share all of your media. We're going to share the link of your book. Tell us a little bit about your book before I share where they find you and everything, because you really wrote a book, plus you have it available for free on your website. And why is it important today, Stacey? Because we are in such challenging times where if we don't adapt and face adversity with resilience, I think, a lot of us are not going to make it through. So tell us a little bit about your book and why this is needed so much in times of change.
Yeah, I think at the moment, we're in not just change, but uncertainty. And I think it's the uncertainty that people are really struggling with at the moment.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Whereas I've sort of flipped how people perceive uncertainty on its head, really, because most people see uncertainty as a negative thing, whereas I see uncertainty as a blank canvas. And the way I look at it is I feel that when nothing is certain, then that means that anything is possible. So it's actually an exciting time, but it's difficult for people to see that because people are consumed by fear, and particularly, all of the media, especially at the moment, is designed to make people afraid. And when people are afraid, they then become disconnected. They become disconnected from other people. They become disconnected to themselves, and they become disconnected to what is greater than them. And so I feel that, resilience and the ability to, I like to see that resilience is how you can grow through challenging situations rather than just go through them. And
yes,
now it's if we believed everything that we saw on the news, like I don't watch the news. That's something I haven't done in probably 10 years.
Smart.
I think that's one of the most negative things that we can do is actually consume all the garbage that's going on. And that's the thing is if you disconnect from that, And that makes a big difference. So, and that's one of the things that I've talked about in my book. It's really important to look at what's around you, what you're consuming, the connections you have, particularly the people around you. And, going back to the old Jim Rohn thing about, you become the average of the 5 people you spend most of your time with. But it's also the same in what you consume. It's what you watch. It's what you eat. It's what you listen to. Everything you consume is having an impact on you. It either makes you feel light and energized or negative and drained, and we need to be constantly reassessing that. So that's part of the things that I talk about in the book. But ultimately, the book is the reverse engineering of how I got to where I am. There's there's some anecdotes from my life, different stories that illustrate the different principles that I've popped together there. But it's also a workbook. And that's the one thing I really wanted. I didn't want a book that was just going to sit on someone read it, put it on their shelf, and they never touched it again. I really wanted this book to be something that people used as a resource, that people went back to time and time again. And I liken that building resilience is it's like going to the gym. We have all these little simple practices we do repetitively and consistently over time, which builds our strength. And so I like to look at my book is actually your resilience gym. And you just go back to those practices. That. Yeah.
I love that, because you are right. Resilience is a muscle, just like faith, just like love, they are not untangible things. You got to go to the gym of experience and of choices and of adaptability and of courage and, to build it. So you did a workbook and so what is the goal of the journey of resilience? Because I've been reading all the testimonials of people, of the trainings you give, and how do you know when a person shifts from non-resilient to resilient?
The biggest thing is, I think, when people aren't resilient, then again they see negativity everywhere. There's an element of blame. I think blame is a very, very
yes.
big sign of someone that isn't resilient, because they will look for everything around them as reasons why things are bad or things are tough. Whereas I feel when somebody is resilient, and I see resilience as a proactive thing, not just, oh, geez, how do you cope? Because I think that sells it short. It's like coping's not – I think if people are just looking how to cope, I think that's a really low bar for how to live life.
Boom. I love that. Learning how to cope is a low bar. Yes.
Yeah.
See, you're a cleaner, Stacey.
Yeah, thank you.
And for those who don't understand, why is Yvonne telling Stacey that she's a cleaner? It's not that she owns a cleaning company or something. Read the book Relentless. And you'll understand. Wow, that's so important what you just said, Stacey.
Yeah, obviously we need to cope. To me, coping is survival.
Yes.
So obviously we need to cope with these things to survive, but to really be fulfilled, to have a really expansive experience of life, then resilience helps us to do that. It helps us to then to seek growth, to seek challenges. For me, I actually get excited about things going wrong or things being challenging, because it's an opportunity to grow.
Yes.
There's no growth without discomfort.
Wow. Wow, Stacey, this is so powerful. I'm sure people are going to want to learn more and find you and everything. So, yeah, the last question, because I know we went a little bit over the use of your time, but you work with teams, you work with organizations, with people, and why would you think, just for the last thing, or what is the importance right now to bring this work of resilience to all the children and the adolescents? I know, because the media is crazy right now. It's more propaganda than there was pandemia. I really believe that the propaganda, the distortion of truth and reality. So I really feel that you are summoning to create an army unto ourselves of resilience. So more than why is it important, because you already say it, what will be the wish, your desire of resilience to bless, to the children and the adolescents? What would you like resilience to tell this generation, for them to know as they grow into the adults that you and I are today?
Yeah, I think the true pandemic over the last couple of years has been the mental health